This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Yo guys, what is up? Max in a Wonderlands video, and today we're going over the best weapons after yesterday's hotfix. If you did not know, yesterday there was a pretty major hotfix that buffed Blackpowder and Hyperius Shotguns by over 40%, and we also got buffs to Skulldugger ARs and the Feriore Shotguns. And today I kind of want to talk about the legendaries and non-legendary weapons that were impacted the most by this and what you should now keep an eye out for. Weapon diversity has been hurting a little bit in this game, being dominated by SMGs and pistols, and now we genuinely have some good shotguns, so I want to tell you guys which ones to look out for. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Let's get right into it. So we're just going to run through a Chaos Chamber, and I'm going to give you guys my top 6 weapons from this hotfix. And we're starting off with the Rogue Imp. Now, I believe you can only get this thing from Chaos Chamber bunnies. That is where I got mine. And I wanted to include it and talk about it because it's a fire weapon, and it got a 43% buff yesterday. And it's actually pretty solid. The tough thing about this weapon is it's got a very low shots to break. It breaks all the time. When it does break, it sends out little like racks basically that go and hit enemies. The thing is, I find the racks to be very underwhelming, but the actual shots from this weapon that it puts out to be pretty strong. So like, I like using the actual shots to kill enemies, but I hate that it has to reload so often because, once again, like, I'm not a huge fan of the racks, and the reload time is, or the break animation is a little bit long. So it's a pretty solid weapon. I wanted to mention it because it is a fire option, and there really aren't that many good fire legendaries, and this is now one of the better ones because, once again, there aren't that many. But yeah, the little racks are a little annoying. If I could fire this thing for a little bit longer, I definitely have it higher up on the list, but that is my number 6. Next up, we've got the Gyre. Now, the Gyre is a Hyperion shotgun that can come in elemental or non-elemental variants. I've got a ×12 and a ×6, and as you hold down the trigger on this weapon, its fire rate and its damage will increase. It's going to start out a very slow fire rate, and as you hold down the trigger, or as you fire it or get closer to ending its magazine, it'll ramp up in damage and ramp up in fire rate. Now, this thing's a little awkward to use because of its super slow fire rate when you start out, and I kind of enjoy using this thing at least a little bit more as a precision weapon. Because it is Hyperion, you can usually get some pretty like accurate shots off of enemies' heads. I'm not a huge fan of this thing just because with its super variable fire rate, it can be a little awkward to use and a little bit awkward to like depend on, but it is our number 5 spot. Next up, at our number 4 spot, we've got the Crossblade shotgun. Now, this thing will always come in dual elements. You can get it exclusively from the Chaos Chambers, and these like versions of weapons, the parables, have been pretty miserable / underperforming in my opinion. The fact that they got buffed, I'm really happy with, and this is kind of the legendary parable, so I was hoping it's good, and I found it to be pretty good on my Stabomancer setup. The Stabomancer specializes in dot damage, and this thing will always come in 2 elements, and you can do some other things to gain other elements, making this a very good weapon to try to apply a bunch of dots to enemies. And that's the current favorite way that I found of using this thing. The damage is still not quite as there as some of the other weapons, but for a dot setup, or to try to hit multiple enemies in a packed area, because this thing will pass through enemies, has been pretty nice. I do still think that, as it being a Chaos Chamber exclusive and one of the cooler weapons on the list, I wish it did a little bit more damage, but genuinely like a pretty solid choice now. It's way better than it was before, receiving over a 40% damage increase. Coming in at our number 3 spot is the last Rites of Sunless Depths. Now, I love this shotgun, and I think it might be one of the best shotguns of the game if you could put an enchant on it. Unfortunately, you can't put an enchant on this weapon. Otherwise, it'd probably be even higher on the list, but you can get this thing as a quest reward from the 20,000 Years Under the Sea. Now, why is this weapon good? It's good because its shots ricochet. It works like a cryo, like Jacob shotgun almost. So as you can see, there's an enemy all the way over there, and by hitting this enemy, its shots are going to ricochet. Now, when you buff up the damage of this thing and go for a cryo build, this then becomes one of the best cryo shotguns in the game, because you're going to be freezing everything around you, and with the Berserker, you're going to deal more damage to frozen enemies. This thing is an absolute dream for freeze builds. It's got solid damage, unfortunately not quite enough to get onto a little bit higher of a spot, but it freezes things like a dream. It ricochets rounds so that it's good for like when there's multiple enemies around, and it's overall a blast. If this thing could get an enchant on it, it would be absolutely amazing. But without the enchant, it's a little bit missing in just like one-on-one damage. I strongly recommend if you're going to use this thing to try to use it when there's multiple enemies around, because its damage isn't great on like one-on-one, but just for freezing and killing enemies, it's really, really nice. As you can see, all of its rounds are ricocheting, just freezing things, and just giving me that good cryo damage. At our number 2 spot is the red Helian. Now, this shotgun is pretty mediocre if you're not using it properly. It's got a very fast fire rate, and you get through the clip extremely fast, and then you've got a very long reload speed. And if you're not using this thing properly, you will not enjoy it at all. However, this weapon has one of the most unique mechanics of the shotguns on this list, in that it gains a pellet per 10% movement in 10% movement speed increase. And you don't actually have to be moving. You just need to have flat movement speed percentage increases. So for example, if I was wearing this class mod, I don't have it on me right now, but for example, if I was wearing this class mod that has plus 23.7% movement speed on it, this smart armor, I would be getting plus 2 pellets on this thing. And so the way that I've been using it right now is I'm using it with a movement speed set up with cold snap, and I've got movement speed from haste and running around. And this thing, if you've got a bunch of movement speed passives and increases, is actually cracked. It does a ton of damage. The biggest downfall to this thing is its low magazine size, and it's got some decent recoil to it. But in terms of like boss killing and fast killing like difficult enemies, it kind of shreds. In fact, it's kind of, if the number 1 spot wasn't so good at shredding things, this would be my number 1 spot. Without a build or focused around this thing, it isn't that great. But if you can get some movement speed increases, and you can use this thing in all elements, or this thing does come in all elements, you can make it pretty versatile. If you want to go get this thing, you can get it from the Chaos Chamber Shotgun Bunnies. That's where I got mine. But it also drops from the Obsidian Wyverns. And coming in at our number 1 spot is the Rain of Arrows. Now, this was already one of the strongest, highest DPS shotguns in the game. Prior to this buff, it got over a 40% damage increase. And for boss melting, this is probably the best shotgun right now. I'm not a huge fan of it in mobbing, just because it's got the biggest downside of dealing self-damage. This thing shoots a literal rain of arrows, and if you run into it, you're going to kill yourself. But if you can keep your distance from enemies and kind of just blanket an area, this thing murders everything. It's really strong. It's a little awkward to use, but you can't deny the DPS that this thing offers. It's got fast reloads, tons of damage, good AoE clear, good boss clear, and just genuinely, like, look at this damage. Let's one shot that super badass is gone. It's really strong. And yeah, definitely keep an eye out for this thing. It does deal area damage, which is also a unique damage multiplier that if you are not using AoE or area damage on your build, this thing is going to benefit from you putting that on, which is why I'm using currently the after getting a gun kill gain plus 20% area damage. It's going to give me even more damage with this weapon. You can get this weapon from the Chaos Chamber Bunnies. All of the shotguns on this list can come from the Chaos Chamber Bunnies and the Rogue Imp as well. If I missed any weapons that you guys think are really strong that I didn't think of, just let me know. But these are my favorite weapons after the changes, and I really like the Rain of Arrows. I really like the Red Helian. Those are probably my 2 favorites. I will catch y'all in the next one, guys. Take care. Peace. Thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. If you did not know, Skillshare is an online learning community that offers thousands of classes in just about anything you could think of. Now, I was looking through classes that I thought I might find interesting or helpful, and I actually found one about resume building. Now, I applied to over 100 jobs when I graduated from college and didn't hear back from a single one. That's kind of part of the reason I'm a content creator right now. I couldn't find anything, and my resume, I think, was terrible. I'm not really sure, but I never heard back. And Skillshare, I found a class that not only is it about building your resume, but it actually lets you submit a resume on Skillshare to the instructor of the class, who will then leave comments and feedback on your resume, which I thought was just so cool and so helpful. I wish I had that when I graduated college. So if you're looking to try Skillshare and possibly learn something new, The first 1,000 people to click the link in the description or the pinned comment or use code MOXIE will receive a month free trial of Skillshare. Thanks again to them for sponsoring this video. I will catch y'all in the next one, guys. Take care. Peace.